Hi everyone, we're going to get started here in just a second. I'm going to give a couple minutes to let a couple of the latecomers come in, and then we will go ahead and get going. If you have any questions or anything like that, everybody should be muted if I did this correctly, just because we get people kind of talking over the top of each other and stuff. We can't hear. So I have everybody muted. So if you have a question, just type it down in the chat box that's on the lower left-hand side, and I will read it out loud, because in the recording, one of the comments that was made is that when we do the recording, we can't quite read. Some of the questions are in that little chat box. So if you have a question during the lecture, then just go ahead and type it down in the chat box, and I will get to it as soon as I can and address anything. It looks like we have most everybody. I feel like we're missing a couple of people, but we will go ahead and get started because it is 4 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and get rolling. Okay, so this webinar is going to be discussing my foundation for how I teach my directional command switch. Excuse me. Excuse me. I have a couple of diagrams that we're going to go over, as well as a YouTube video that I made that we're going to sit and watch, that kind of goes over how I teach my switch, what the foundation for it is, and then we will go from there. So the first thing that we're going to do is watch the YouTube video. So we're going to go ahead and click that on, and hopefully everything's working just hunky-dory, and it should play. I'm going to forewarn everybody. The last webinar, because there's a bit of a lag between my internet, everybody else's internet, and then this software, when the video's done playing, there's probably going to be about a 10 to 20 second lag before you hear me talk again, and that's just my internet trying to connect with the webinar server. So don't worry if you hear a bit of a lag. If you hear nothing for an extremely long time, then go ahead and type something in the chat box. But there should probably be almost 20 seconds worth of lag between when this video gets done and it lets me start talking again. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and watch this video that's going to talk about and demo how I begin to teach my directional command switch. In this video, I'm going to show how I start teaching switch. Now, Allie does not know switch very well. We've had some issues with it, so I just haven't really gone deep into training yet. She usually spins. I think I've kind of got that addressed, but if she doesn't spin, I'll still show you what I did to address that spin that she has. But this is how I start teaching a switch. I want the hoops to be very close together, so it's instant success, instant reward. It probably is not going to happen in this lesson because, like I said, she's still new and we're learning switch. But as we progress, I'm going to continue to move this hoop out, so it starts becoming at a distance that they would see in a trial. And that's how I progress through my switches. I keep taking this hoop and moving it out. And I also going to work both sides. I'm going to continue to keep her on my left just so the camera angle kind of shows her a little bit better and you're not blocked by me. Yeah. So what I do initially is I'm going to bring her up. I'm going to ask her to wait. I have food in this hand, so she's going to see the food in this hand. So I'm going to direct her to the hoop. Switch. Good. Now, if you're having issues, if they're spinning, and what I did with her is I take the top off of my hoop. So then, come here, go real quick. So then what I can do is I can bring her through here, show her this food, and tell her switch. You can even take the top off that hoop if you need to. So you can lure her through with your hand a couple of times to kind of get her used to what she's supposed to be doing. She's supposed to be moving away from you. What ended up happening with her is I taught her how to spin in front of me. So Allie, come here. So what ended up happening is when I went to do a switch, she would come through here, spin, and then do her switch. So I needed to get rid of that spin. So I just took the tops off my hoop so I could lure her through that. Let's do this a couple more times. Sit. Good. Switch. Good. And I'm really exaggerating with my outside arm right now to really show her I need a change of direction. Switch. Good. As we get better and as she gets better, my exaggeration of my arm is going to come down a little. It should look more like this. Switch. Good. But I really want her to see that arm, so when we progress through these lessons, she really understands This body language means a change of direction. A couple more times. Sit. Switch. Yeah. You're a good girl. Sit. Good. Switch. Yeah. Good job. Wait, I know. So we're going to go ahead and move this hoop a little bit because she's doing so good. Just move that out there. Sit. Good job. Oh, switch. Yeah. Make sure and keep driving. Lie down. A lot of people have a tendency when we're doing the switch, you say switch, and then we stop. And that stops all that dog's movement. Drive through. Make sure to meet him down here at the end of this hoop. You don't want your dog to learn that switch means we turn and all of our acceleration stops. Continue to drive and continue that rotation. Sometimes we get in the habit, or we come through, we say switch, and we just stop here, right? And so I'm facing out this way when I should be facing here to give her a treat, finish that rotation. Good girl, alligators. Yeah. Switch. Yeah. Yeah. One more time. Switch. Yeah. Good job. So as we progress through these lessons, same as what we do with the here and the right ear, I'll continue adding hoops, and we'll continue spacing this out as she learns what that switch means, and continue getting her driving further and further with that switch. Okay, so that video is just kind of showing, it was part of a directional series I did, and it just shows literally the first steps of teaching a switch. And as I said in the video, we would take those two hoops and we would slowly start to spread them further and further out. We're going to take a look at our first diagram. So this is a pinwheel, and I'm going to kind of discuss what my switch is and what it means to my dogs. So a switch means for my dog to turn away from me. So we have our little handler here, and here's our little dog. He's all bending kind of funny. But if the dog is on my left side, just like this diagram, so the dog's on my left side, I want them, if I'm going to do a switch, that means that I'm going to cross behind them where my pencil's going. I'm going to cross behind them, and eventually this dog is going to end up on my right side. They are turning away from me. Switch always means for the dog to turn away from me. So if they're on my left side, they are turning away. They're not going to come with me like a post turn or anything like that. It's basically a rear cross. Most often than not, when you're doing a switch, unless you're doing a lot of distance work or something like that, or it's an unusual sequence, more often than not, you are going to cross behind your dog when you're doing a switch. Excuse me. So my switch always means for them to turn away from me, and that's kind of what this little diagram is showing. Is just, you know, this in this sequence of these three hoops here for this pinwheel, is that if I'm over here on this side of the dog, on, you know, on their right side, yeah, they're on, yeah, that they are going to turn and going to go through these three hoops, and they're turning away from me. So switch always means to turn away. We're going to come back to this diagram and talk about some more advanced stuff with switch, but I want to go, we're going to look at this one with all these pretty colored hoops and talk about kind of the foundation and how we progress through that. So up here, we're going to start up here with these green hoops. Now this is our base foundation exercise, what we just watched in that YouTube video. Our hoops are extremely close to each other. In the video, if you watch it again, you'll see that I've placed the hoops so that the feet are on the outside, so the dog's not having to run over the feet. Obviously on my little diagram here, you know, there's feet on both sides, but if you are setting this up at home, go ahead and try to place it so that, you know, what's touching of the hoops, you know, two pieces of hoop touching together is not the feet, if that makes sense. And the dogs aren't having to run over the top of feet while they're doing their switch. So as you can see, with the two little green hoops right here, we want them very close together. And again, switch means for my dog to turn away from me. So again, my dog is on my left, and they're turning away from me to go through these two hoops. Obviously, we're going to work both sides, so we would mirror this, you know, and flip this hoop over here so we could switch to both the left and to the right. If we come over here to now our blue hoops, you can see I'm starting to move the hoop down. I'm not moving it out like what we did in this pinwheel. I'm not moving it up to make a pinwheel type sequence. I am eventually making this a 180 with it. So this hoop here is starting to move away from our start hoop, and it's starting to get a little flatter. So I want my dog to turn away from me and get this kind of motion going, this nice little 180 motion. Until eventually now we get over here to our pink hoops, and we have this still, they're still pretty close. I do keep them nice and close at the beginning because I want that instant success, instant reward. So I do tend to keep things fairly close in the beginning stages of when I'm teaching. So this is kind of the progression of how we go. We go green to blue to pink for how we move our hoops for teaching switch. And you're going to be working, both sides, both directions, all that sort of good stuff. And then down here, these red hoops is what eventually you're going to get to where you start getting that 18 to 21 feet in between everything, what you're going to see in an 8-act trial. I keep moving them further and further out until we have this nice little 180 going. So why do I teach it as a 180? Now, the reason behind that is that I want my dogs to learn that a switch is tight. It's a tight turn. I don't want a lot of arc. I don't want a lot of, big loopy turn. I really want them to learn right from the get-go that a switch is a nice, clean, tight turn. This 180. I want them to learn that right from the beginning. And then we will start to discuss how I get a pinwheel. But from the beginning, I really want this nice 180 turn. I don't want a lot of arc. So I do teach it, excuse me, I do teach it starting, nice and close like this, and then eventually like this blue hoop to this pink hoop, we are moving that hoop down into that 180 formation. The reason I start here with the green hoops and that with the hoops at kind of this angle, this little, looks like it's the beginnings of a pinwheel sort of angle, is I want the dogs to be looking for that hoop. And again, I'm all about instant success, instant reward. So everything's very close and it's very successful in the beginning. They see a hoop, they get a treat. See a hoop, get a treat. Just like in the video that I did with Allie, she is doing her switch and immediately gets her treat. It's not doing her switch and then, there's this distance between, getting her treat and where she just performed the switch. So I start with these little green hoops right here so that the dog can really have a visual of, I want you to go that way. Here's the hoop, I want you to go to it. And then when I get into the blue diagram, now they're going to have to work a little harder. She's going to have to look for that hoop just a little bit more, turn a little tighter, and really pay attention. And then when we get to the pink hoop, even more. She's going to have to give me a nice, clean, tight turn. We're going to be looking for that hoop. And she should, by this point, be really starting to understand that switch means to turn away from me. I start adding. We'll see if I can draw. For those who have been to previous webinars of mine, you all know how great I am with this whole drawing feature. We come down here to the red. I think I can even make my little pin red. When I start, when I get my dogs to this point, we're really doing a nice 180. They're doing a nice switch. I really feel as though they are understanding what that switch means. I'm going to start adding some, oh, good Lord. Oh, no, we can't do that. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. It's a hoop. Pretend that's a hoop. We're going to use our power of imagination, and we're going to pretend that's a hoop. So then I would start them back here, and I would then ask them to go hoop, hoop, switch to another hoop, and then maybe another jumper hoop here, or a tunnel, or contact, whatever you want to use, and start adding this into a sequence. Start adding your distance work into there. Start showing the dogs what they're going to see in a trial. So I just gradually start adding more and more and more to it. Now we're going to talk about pinwheel. I don't quite know why I did 2 pinwheel diagrams, but I was in the mood to draw things today apparently. So we'll go back to this big one here. I don't have to look at my funny hoop that I made. So now, if we've taught our dogs, switch is this nice little 180, right? So, you know, they have this really nice, clean, tight turn. Now we're in a trial sequence class, whatever it is, and we need to do a switch, but it is a pinwheel. You know, it is this look right here. How do we achieve that? If we've taught our dogs that a switch is a 180, how do we achieve a switch is this pinwheel? So that's where I differ from a lot of people with my commands, in that I tend to blend things together. I tend to make my commands kind of mush together to work, if that makes sense. I do not like having a million commands for every single turn or every single thing that can happen on course. I can barely remember my own name when running, so I really don't feel like having a million commands is quite what I need. So I stick with my base commands. My base commands being out, here, switch, and tight. Those are my 4. Those I feel when I have those 4 commands, I can get through almost all courses. You know, I do have a back, which is its own webinar all in itself, that I did teach strictly for distance work. But those base commands, out, here, switch, tight, those are the commands that I feel, you know, you have to have at least those, you know, to maneuver around all the different courses. So when I get into a sequence like this, if I have taught my dog switch, you know, is this really nice tight 180, and now I need this switch and I need them to go up, you know, and do this pretty little pinwheel thing we got going on here. What I'm going to do, and again, I am all about what works for you and your dog and what makes you happy. I have found this is what works for me and my dogs. This is what makes me happy. So this is just how I do it. That does not mean that this is the way I feel everybody should do it. It's just you need to play with things to make a handling system work for you and your dog. So how I would handle this sequence is if I needed my dog to do what I would call, it is a very technical term, is a loopy switch or an archy switch, such as this pinwheel, then I'm going to tell my dog switch out. So the switch gives me the change of direction, the out gives me the degree. The out gives me, you know, not the direction, but the degree of switch I'm doing. All my commands are also body language dependent. So body language dependent also means that I'm not going to stand in one spot and have my hands at my sides and say switch and expect my dogs to do it. I am going to follow through. Even if I'm a long ways away or right next to my dog, my biggest goal when handling my dogs is that if you were to take a video of me running my dog and running right next to them, and then a video of me running my dog from 80 feet away, should look exactly the same. I should still be moving. I should still be giving body language. I should still be supporting my dog with my body at all times. So that is my goal. So even with this switch here, if I'm giving her a switch out so I can get up to this top hoop, my body language is supporting that. I'm not going to give a switch and then spin really tight in a circle and still expect my dog to go out and hit this top hoop. I may not go all the way up here and help them. You know, we're going to draw again. Everybody prepare yourselves. I may just go from this, you know, little handler. If I want her to go out and I'm going to do some distance, my switch body language might look like that. You know, I'm not gaining a lot of distance towards my dog. I'm just doing this nice little arc with them. But I'm still giving them the body language for it. I'm not going to, let's see if we can get a different color here. I'm not going to go and say, okay, I'm going to give my dog this switch out, but I want to prepare for, you know, whatever's down here. So I'm just going to say switch out and do this. That and my dogs wouldn't understand that. They would expect me to support them with my body language and give them that path. Even though I may not be running all the way up there with them, my body should still be telling them where to go. My verbal commands only back up my body language. They are just there to confirm what my body language should already be saying. So if everything about my body language is saying out, my arm is out, my leg is out, you know, everything about my look is saying out, but I'm yelling here, I would fully expect my dogs to do an out as opposed to a here. My body is always going to trump what my excuse me, what my verbal is saying. I have zero idea of how to erase those little lines, so we're just going to have to deal with them now. So that's kind of what I do when it comes to my directionals, and switch is one of the big ones. As far as, you know, kind of mushing commands together. I will also give my dogs a switch tight. Tight for my dogs means for them to turn as tight towards me as they possibly can. So here we are with the lines again. Let's whip this out till we can't even figure out what this diagram says anymore. We're going to pretend that this is the dog, and I want them to go from this hoop, and they're going to circle and come right in between. I want them to come down here for some reason, right? So that would be a switch tight. If my handling position is here and I want my dogs to do that, I want them to change direction, which is a switch, and then tight needs to turn tight back towards me, which I'm over here. So my body language, again, should almost, excuse me, should look like this blue line, pretty much. Blue and black line would go together. See how they do kind of go together? And that would give me that switch tight that I'm looking for. So that's kind of how I do things with my switch. You know, in my opinion, I love teaching switch. It's one of my strong points because I really enjoy teaching it, and I really enjoy these variations of it. I enjoy teaching my dogs, you know, here's a nice tight switch with the 180, here's a switch out, here's a switch tight. I love working on that kind of stuff. Back to teaching with a 180. The reason I teach with a 180 is because I want my dog's default to be to turn tight. So I want that to be their default. So when I say switch, I expect this clean, nice, purty, tight turn. So if this was a course, and for some reason my course went like this, hoop to hoop, I would expect that if I said switch, their default should be to go hoop to hoop. And I would also expect my body language to follow through with that. And then when I say switch out, I would then expect this nice pinwheel look. And that's kind of why I wanted to start with that 180, is so they learn right from the get-go, turn tight. Because it's a lot easier to teach a dog to go out and give me nice big arcs than it is to turn tight. So I'd like for their foundation to be a nice, clean, tight turn. And then from there, I can teach them to switch out and things like that. Good Lord. So that's kind of how I teach a switch. I enjoy it because it's very easy, it's very simple. It's fun to do. As far as rewarding your dog, see, I'm going to open the YouTube video and see if I can get it to go where I want it. Okay, that's a good spot. So I use food, and I use food quite a bit. And you can see me right here. Allie is on my left side. I have food in my left hand. And I'm going to step forward with my left foot, and that is going to drive her to that first hoop. That left foot is telling her we're going to that first hoop. And then you're going to see me turn, and I'm going to turn my body to meet her, and I will now feed her off my right side. What we don't want to do is have food in our left hand and then try to cue it with our inside arm. I hope that makes sense to everybody. We don't want that kind of funky inside arm thing. I always cue with my outside arm. I don't know. Let's see if we can get this to move forward just there, kind of. Nope. I'm whipping hoops apart now. Let's see if we can go down a little bit. I wish there's a good spot. There we go. So there, you see me, I've turned, and my food is now in my right hand. So I cue her with my left, and in the beginning, I lure her. I lure her in with my left, and then as she comes through the hoop, I'm now feeding with my right. Same goes, you know, just flip this when you want to work the other side. You're going to cue with your right, you know, take that first step forward to push them through the hoop, and then you would feed with your left. I always feed with, you know, when you go to treat your dog with a switch, if you just remember, you're going to feed them with the hand that's furthest away from the dog. When you're first starting, if she's on my left, I have food in my right, and that's the food that I'm going to end up feeding her, because it's eventually going to be the side that she is on. Now, if you're going to use toys, I'm not against toys in any way, shape, or form. I just happen to use food. I do use toys with her quite a bit as well. It just kind of depends on what I'm teaching and what I am trying to get out of that session. So if you're going to use toys, again, I would put the toy in my outside hand so that as they come through the hoop, you can toss it and it all looks natural. You're not trying to toss it with that inside arm and it makes for odd body language. You want to toss it with that outside arm and it really helps your shoulders and your hips follow through on that turn. So even when using using toys, you want to make sure it's out there in your outside arm. If you're going to use a target, you're going to want to place the target after your second hoop, so they're driving out to that target. I tend to place targets at least a stride away from the last hoop so they're not, like having to kind of dive through the hoop and they're in the middle of a target. I tend to put it out a little bit so they have a little bit of stride length to get to it, so we're not teaching them to stop basically in the middle of their turn. The next thing I want to address, and we'll just go back to this diagram real quick so I don't have to look at that anymore, is the next thing I want to address is extension and collection in a turn. The one thing we really want to teach, and this is not just for a switch, this is for any turn whatsoever, is that you want your dog to be extended as they're coming into the turn, which means that they are striding out. Their feet are going past their nose. Okay, they are running. They are an extension. When they come into the turn, I want them to collect, make the turn, and then extend again. Sometimes dogs have a hard time either collecting, coming into the turn, collecting and making the turn, and they just want to stay in extension the whole time. Or they have a really hard time once they've collected, they don't know how to get back into extension again and get going again. And that is a time sometimes I will use a toy. If I have a dog who doesn't quite, she'll get collected in the middle of that turn and she doesn't know how to extend and run again, I will maybe toss a toy to help her learn, extend, collect, extend. You can use targets the exact same way. A lotus ball is really good. Allie loves the lotus ball. Things like that can get them to drive forward, and drive ahead. If you don't want to use a toy or a target or anything of that nature to help with collection extension, you can use tunnels. Most all dogs like tunnels. If they don't like tunnels, there's probably another piece of equipment that they enjoy. So in one seminar that I did that we were doing nothing but directionals all day, is we had this hoop set up, basically these two red hoops right here. We had these two red hoops and we were working on switch, and we put a tunnel here where this red line is, and I put another tunnel here, just right across from it. So we sent them through this first tunnel. They're all nicely extended. We bring them into this turn. They collect really nice, and I'll talk about what happens if they don't collect. But they collect really nice in this turn, and then shoom, send them into the next tunnel, extend. So it's a really good exercise to teach them extend, collect, extend. And then you can start adding more obstacles in between these two tunnels and these two hoops to where then it's maybe tunnel, jump, jump into your switch, and then back down again. That's a really, really good way to teach a dog how to get that collection extension. Now, what if you have a dog that extends beautifully and comes to this turn and is extended and just takes 40 acres to make that turn? You cannot get the collection you need in that turn. I have had the most success with using gates. Then the first thing is, and I have to reiterate it 100 times, the first thing is that we're not using the gates to stop their path. They are strictly a visual. People see me bring the gates out and they think that I'm trying to, bar the dog off or stop them from making, going out wide, and I'm not. The gates are strictly there as a visual for the dog to tell them that they need to collect. So when I put gates up, so we're going to draw again. So when I put gates up, I'll put one here at an angle, and I'll put one here at an angle. I'm not gating across the whole thing. Some dogs I have to, they just don't quite know how to collect. But when I first put the gates out, they're at least 10 feet away from the hoops. So there's no chance of the dog hitting them as far as, like they're going to go through the hoop and the gate's only 3 feet away and they're going to hit it. I never want to put the gates in a place where the dogs have the chance of, running into them or hitting them or anything of that nature. I'm strictly looking for a visual. And I use the setup quite a bit. Have a tunnel here. We'll even draw another little line and pretend this is a tunnel over here. And so we will go tunnel, hoop, switch into a hoop into another tunnel. And when I put these two gates up here like that, what that does is it gives the dogs, as they're going through this hoop, it gives them this visual of a barrier. They cannot pass this area. And they see it and they're like, oh, wow. And so their initial reaction is, ooh, and they'll collect. And that's what we're looking for. So then when we give them their switch command and they make that turn, we're like, yes, and you're going to reward. You're going to, you're going to give them their treat, a ball, a toy, whatever, their target, send into the tunnel, whatever is what they want. You're going to tell them how great they are and get them used to that feeling. A lot of times dogs don't collect. It's not because they're bad or not because they only want to run fast or they don't want to do this, that, or the other. They don't know how to make their bodies do it. They don't know how to make their feet, slow down and then speed up again. I've seen lots of dogs that they'll collect and they'll do this beautiful, beautiful turn. They're all collected and they just stay in this collected lope the rest of the course because they don't know how to make their bodies extend. They don't know how to get back into that state again. So the same for this dog that maybe doesn't collect for this turn right here is not that they're being bad, they just don't know how. So when you put the gates up like this, it gives them this visual that they need to slow down. They need to, slow down and make a turn. And when they feel their bodies do that, when they feel their body go extend, and then they feel their body collect and now extend again, they like it. And they dogs that go fast, and most dogs that I've ever seen that don't collect for a turn, once they understand that they can collect and it's only a stride or two and then they get to run again, they love it. They want to be able to use their bodies like that. And this is the best way I've found is just by putting a couple of gates up there, and it helps the dogs make that turn. You can also use road cones. You can use really tall road cones. If you have old wings from wing jumps, anything that provides a barrier and you're going to keep it, like I said, I'm 10 feet away. Some dogs, as they're some dogs, the 10 feet away is just too far. They're still being extended. If you've got maybe a smaller dog, they're still extended. And so I'll start with the gates a long ways away, and then I will slowly maybe bring them in. If I have a dog that I feel like they're just not, they're not quite getting the picture of those gates, then I'll move them in just a little bit closer to the hoops. But again, never so close to the hoops that the gates are actually impeding their path. The gates are actually forcing a path. I don't ever want the dogs to feel like they're going to hit the gate or run into the gate. They are strictly there as a visual to show the dog, here's kind of the path, that I want you to take, which is why the gates are at an angle like this. I want the dogs to see, okay, we're going this way, and now we're going this way. It's like a nice little V is what we're looking for. And the biggest thing with turns is collection and extension. So I'm huge with that with all my turns. My switches, my tights, my heres, and my back. I really want my dogs to learn. I want them to always be in extension and running as fast as they can, and then collect, and then off we go into extension again, and really understand what that feels, for their body, like nice collection extension. Beyond the fact that, it helps with the path on the course. It gives you a nice, clean, pretty path when your dog collects and extends properly. It's also much easier on their body than a dog who's in full extension 100% of the time is just jamming their body all around the course. So this is a great exercise, I think for all dogs to really show them, nice collection and extension. And like I said, most dogs like tunnels, so that's what we use. I had one dog in a seminar that utterly loved weave pulls. So we stuck a set of 6 out here, and she wouldn't extend out of a turn. So we would, she'd start into a turn and she'd just stay collected. So we ended up putting in a set of weave pulls right here. So she came through, she collected, she saw our weave pulls, and she extended. So you have to, use what works for your dog. Use what your dog likes and what they want. Okay, so do we have any questions while we're sitting here? I've seen a few people start typing and then stop typing, and sometimes it's just my webinar thingy. It's if you move your mouse around sometimes. It thinks you want to say something. And as far as adding more and more distance, you just keep moving yourself, backing yourself further up. I tend to work, everywhere. I want my dogs to learn that a switch, is the same as if I'm right here where this little pencil is, or if I'm way over here, I'm back here. I want them to really learn a switch is a switch. I'm going to practice everywhere. Would a serpentine be 2 switch commands? Oh, hey, now you, Gold Star, that is a good question. Let's open up our whiteboard and prepare for Amanda to draw. Yeah, this is going to be fantastic. Okay, here we go. Oh, you know what? I just remembered my computer's a touch screen. I think it might be better with my finger. Okay, so can I do this? Oh, yeah, much better. Okay, I'm excited. Serpentine. So a serpentine, okay? So we're going to pretend my pencil is my dog, and he's going to go over. And he comes over this one, and then he goes over this one, and then we don't know where he goes. Well, we're going to pretend, we're going to set another jump up over here, and we're going to set one over here. Obviously, these are not to scale. Okay, so let's start with just our serpentine. This is our path. Dog goes here, comes to the middle, and goes back out. That's where we're going to stop for right now. So a serpentine. So if my dog, let's get a different color. We don't want to confuse anybody. Oh, look at all these pretty colors. Okay, so this is the dog. Okay, my pencil is me. So if my dog is here and I'm over here, obviously right out of the gate, this is going to be a switch. This is our 180. Switch, right? So we're going to say our dog comes over here. Now our doggy is here. And me as a handler, it's starting to look like a face. So, sorry, I get excited about shiny things. So my dog has done a switch. I, as a handler, now am here, right? So here's my dog again, this little pink spot, and I'm right here. So yes, in this case, now we're going to give my dog another switch because I'm going to follow through, and he's going to do this nice path. There we go. So in that handling position, yes, 2 switches. So what if, we're going to start back over here with this pink dog again. I'm the pencil. Now from here, this is going to be a here because the dog's on the same side as me. We're turning together, so that's just a here. But now here I am. Here's my pink dog again. Here I am. This is going to be a switch. So in that serpentine instance, there's only 1 switch. Now what if I'm here? Okay, this is my pencil. Pinky dog, he's starting over there. I'm here. Now, what are we going to call all this, right? So for me and my dogs, this is going to be a here, right? Because I wish I had a video or something because I don't know how to explain. But I'm going to be pushing them up and drawing them down. They're not ever turning away from me, right? If you guys could see my motions behind the computer, it makes sense. And then from this little green jump to this green jump is going to be my back. And in a nutshell, my back means my dog is coming directly at me and I push them back away from me. It's not a switch because they're not on a hip and turning away. I hope that makes sense. They are literally coming to my front and turning away. So in that case, there would be no switch for this serpentine. So it's all in where your handling position is, and it is where you're going afterwards. So let's pretend we're going to come up here to this jump now. So here I am again. Actually, let's do the post-turn one. So here I am again. This is a here, and then I go switch for my second, right? So a here for 1 and 2, switch for 2 and 3, and then I would just run up, and this would be a go. Okay? But what if I wanted to go to this little green line, this jump? So if I'm here again, it's here for 1 and 2, switch for 2 and 3, but now here I am, and I'm assuming my dog should be at this jump. Here I am. It'd be now a switch for 3 and 4. So serpentines really, really, really depend on where you are as a handler. Because a serpentine could, just like what you're saying, a serpentine could easily be 2 switch commands, and I've done 2 switch commands on a serpentine. Or a serpentine could only be 1 switch command, or no switch commands. It is all in how you handle them. It's all in where you're at and what your dog is doing, and also in how your dog takes these jumps. So let's go back to our 4 jump serpentine, okay? Pink dog. So if he goes over this jump, right, here's my pencil. Now, as he goes over this jump, he takes this green jump at an angle, right? He's slicing it. Then he takes this green jump at an angle. He slices. See how my pencil, even though it's not straight, is so in the dog's eyes, he's not really ever changing direction. He's not doing 180s. This is 180s. He's slicing. Oh gosh, that was a wild dog path. He's slicing these jumps just like this, right? Does that kind of make sense to everybody? So sometimes I've gotten to say this middle jump. If my dog takes this middle jump as a 180, meaning they're going up and they're coming kind of through this one. But almost if my dog, if he comes at it and he's slicing, I almost would just give him an out or a go, depending on what my commands mean to what your commands mean to your dog and how this is set. Could be an out or a go. So you can get yourself in a bit of a bind here. If the dog comes through here and they're slicing it and you say switch, they're probably going to give you a pretty big head check going, huh? I don't, what, where? You know, because they're looking at this as an out or a go. Does that make sense, Linda? Hopefully it does. I get the rambling sometimes, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. And just because I want to, I'm going to look. Smiley face. Okay, so anyway. Does that, so it's all on, where you are, where your handling is. On the pinwheel, is it okay to use out switch versus switch out as the verbal? Totally up to you and your dog. It is what you and your dog understand. You could definitely use out switch. My biggest thing with verbals is that you should be able, I do this in every seminar I teach now. The very first day, I make everybody pull out a piece of paper and a pen, and I say, I want you to write down every verbal command you have, including your start line. Tell me, what your wait command is, your contacts, every verbal command you give your dog on an agility course. Tell me what they are, and then alongside it, tell me what that means to you, right? And then I want you to what that command, so like switch, what does that command mean to you? And now, on the next column, what do you expect your dog to do with that command, right? So you then can look at that piece of paper, and so during the seminar, we'll refer to that piece of paper. So in the instance of the serpentine, let me erase my smiley face. So in the instance of the serpentine, oh wow, this takes forever. Okay, so in the instance of the serpentine, if I have a handler who tells me my switch means for my dog to turn away from me, I said, okay, that's good. But does that turn away from you mean that they're always on your hip? Does that turn away from you? Can they be running towards you? Can you be ahead of them? Can you be behind them? Can you be out here? Is it, how black and white are we? What does that switch mean? So that when we get in a situation, we're working in a seminar, and they're like, my dog knows switch. Well, do they really? You and your dog fully understand together what switch means? Can you look me in the eye and tell me 100% without a doubt, if I were to put your handling position up here and you were to say switch, is that still a switch to your dog? There's no gray there. And it's not that there's a right or a wrong. There's never a right or a wrong. It's just understand what those verbals mean. And if you can't explain to me what your verbals mean, then I don't think your dog would fully understand what those verbals mean. You should be able to explain to me without a hesitation. When I say, tell me what your switch looks like, you should be able to draw it out in amazing color of exactly this is what your switch looks like, this is what you expect from your dog every single time. So for your question of out versus switch out, it's, again, totally in how you want to handle it. And I think that's a good question. And I kind of look at it too, going, out switch, that's not a bad idea. Instead of saying switch out, you get your out, so you get your degree, and then the switch gives you the turn. I mean, that's actually not a bad idea at all. You're going to make me think about my commands now, see? So does that make sense to everybody? As far as, number one, how I teach the switch, how we go through the foundation and all that sort of good stuff. And then we got into talking about the serpentines. Does that all kind of make sense of how I mush commands together? How it all works. And Deborah's going to make me go home and sit and think about if I should say out switch or switch out. That's what I'll be doing over dinner and wine tonight. All right, do we have any other questions? I see a couple of little typey things. Switch versus left and right. So that again is handler preference. I use switch because it's what, number one, it's what I've always used. So, you know, old habits and all that jazz. In switch, I know I can just, you know, pull it out. I know that if something has happened on a course and we are now all messed up and I don't know how to get back on course, I always know switch means turn away from me, and I don't have to think about it. It happens. I hope that makes sense. You know, I don't have to think about, okay, is this a switch? I know if that's a switch. Left and right, I have no issues with left and right. I admire and I envy people who say left and right, because I think it is amazing, and I definitely want to teach it, but I don't think I can do it. You know, like I've tried it a little bit, just playing around, and I can't get myself consistent enough. That again, it's back to that whole, can I, you know, explain to somebody exactly what my left and right means? And I can't. Like, I can't figure out how to make it work for me and my dog. So it's just not something I've ever done. But that does not mean that I don't think it's absolutely amazing to watch people with a left and a right. It's cool. So again, I think it's all into what you know, what you like, and what you want to do. So a left and a right would basically, you would, instead of saying my here and switch, would be somebody's left and right, is kind of how I translate the two. So a switch can be used whenever you would use a rear cross. Yeah, most often than not, when you're doing a rear cross, you're changing direction. I can't really think of any times, I'm probably going to kick myself, but I can't think of any times that I would do a rear cross without a change of direction, you know, without the switch. So I would say that, at least for me and how I handle it, every time I rear cross, I'm probably going to be giving a switch as well. Okay, I see a few more questions typing their way up. And when we do, so after this, everybody who's in the webinar who signed up, you all will get a recording of this webinar. It takes me a while to upload it, process it, and then re-upload it or download it. So it'll probably be, if I'm really fast, it'll be tonight or tomorrow morning, and you have access to that recording for as long as you live. Using your left and right requires that you know your left from your right, and that is true. And that is why I use switch in here, because I know switch means go away, here means come to me. I don't have to think about it. When do you add the verbal cue to switch? So, yeah, I tend to do it right from the get-go. I know that a lot of trainers, and I think you're supposed to teach the behavior first and then add your cue. I never have. I've always just done my cue with the behavior right from the get-go, with pretty much everything I do. I guess my opinion is I want my dog to be hearing that cue, you know, right from the go. So as soon as that foundation video we watched, as soon as I am doing that switch with them, with those two hoops right next to each other, I'm saying switch. Right from the get-go, and I do that with all of my behaviors, whether it's working on my fitness exercises or teaching agility. I always add a verbal right from the go. It cleans me up. It makes me, you know, in my head, it makes me feel, okay, we're doing a switch. I'm saying switch. I'm putting the body language to it, and I think it keeps everything clean. Again, what works for you and your dog. I've worked with people. I currently have one private student I'm working with that she does everything very methodically, and she teaches the behavior 100% and then adds a cue to it, and I'm working with her, and I think her and her dogs are amazing. And we teach very differently, but it works together well, if that makes sense. So it's just what you feel comfortable with, and what works for you, what makes you happy. That's the biggest thing. What makes you happy when you're training? Back to serpentine. Would your use of go or out or switch be somewhat dependent on where the dog is looking besides where you are? Yes, ma'am. Yes, and that's where it gets hard. Heck, I have tons of videos where I watch, and especially where we do beta at some trials, is that you'll run the same course twice, and I'll run a serpentine one way, and my dog will say, "Give me these really nice 180s." So depending on my handling position, it could be switch and switch, 2 switches. And then the next run, whether she collects differently, extends differently, comes into the serpentine a little differently, she'll end up slicing this whole thing. And I have to be aware of kind of what she's doing. You can never 100%, know exactly what your dog's looking at, because you're running, your dog's running, you're processing a whole bunch of stuff, where your handling position is, where you need to be, where you're going. On top of all of it, but you can kind of get a feel, like after you run, you run your dog for like me and Allie are very green together, so I don't know her really well, but once her and I run together for a while, you start kind of knowing their little behaviors, and you can figure out where they're looking or where their head's at. It gives you an idea of what you're going to get in that serpentine. So it is very definite that you have to be willing to, even though you walk the course and you walk this course with 2 switches because you think that's what your dog's going to do, but as they come into that serpentine, they come in and you can see them starting to slice, and you can see that it's pointed up here and not pointed down here. You have to be willing to change those cues and now go into saying go or out, whichever command you need to pick up the rest of that serpentine. So you kind of have to be willing to change up those commands on the fly. All right, do we have any other questions? I hope that makes sense to everybody. I get to rambling a little bit, but hopefully it makes sense. And the biggest thing, one thing I didn't address super well, is your feet. Really make sure that your feet are pointing where you want your dog to go. So in the case of this serpentine, is that I want my feet to be pointing at this jump. Now we're going to be pointing at this jump, and now we're going to be pointing at this jump. I want my feet my lower body to be really giving them that direction of where to go. We don't want to rely just on our upper body, and just on our shoulders, rotate and turn. We want our shoulders to show our body, but our lower body and our feet really help drive that message home. So really, I've really gotten into really focusing on those feet, because if you can get your feet to go, you can get your feet to point where you want your dog to go, the rest of your body will follow. So that's always a good thing. Okay, so we have any other questions? Everything kind of makes sense to everybody? We're all good? Kind of, sort of. I see a couple little people typing every now and then. Well, thank you guys for coming. I think we're getting ready to wrap it up unless anybody has any questions. And I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll be good to go. And like I said, I should have it out for Speedy. I'll maybe have it out tonight, but more than likely not till tomorrow. Awesome. Thank you guys for coming. This is excellent. I will put out when the next webinars will be, which my next month is super crazy busy, so it probably won't be till mid next month. How far apart would you put the hoops to teach a switch on a serpentine? So I start with them really close, like touching. The 2 hoops are touching, just like this diagram. Where to go? There we go. Like these pink ones here, but I would make them touch, right? If you're working on this 180, you can bring them together and make them touch, and then you take one of your hoops or both, however you want to do it, and you slowly start to space them out. Okay, but in the beginning, because we want that nice, success, we want fast success right off the bat, I put everything close together. I almost all my exercise and everything I do, I literally put them as close together as I can, so that my dog has instant success, and instant reward. And then I will start to move these little buggers further and further out, and then adding in my 3rd hoop, as we go. Does that make sense, Karen? Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to stop the recording. And I'd like to thank everybody again for coming. These are awesome. I love doing these webinars. It's super fun. And I will email everyone the recording as soon as I get it done. Thank you.